Hello and welcome back once again to movie reviews. So again, sorry if the audio is still shit. I'm recording this right after I recorded the last one, so I haven't figured out what's wrong with the microphone yet. Hopefully I will get it fixed in time for the next review. Hopefully. If not, then hopefully before too many more reviews go by, I'll get it back up and running. So, again, at the second run theater, the last movie that I wanted to see over there, and this one they actually just added, and this one's been out probably the longest, so I'm actually surprised they just added it, and that would be The Intern. Not The Internship, not the Owen Wilson movie. This is The Intern starring De Niro? Yeah, Robert De Niro. I had to think of his name for a second. So I went and saw this movie directly after seeing The Maze Runner 2, and their times were fairly close to each other, and the way I had it timed out, if I sit all the way through the credits of The Maze Runner 2, go out, get the ticket, come right back into the theater, I should be right at the end of the previews right as the movie starts, because there's usually about 10 minutes worth of previews before each movie. So you usually got a 10-minute window at the start time. So I finished watching the credits for Maze Runner 2, ran out, got the new ticket, and I was on my way into the theater, and I just had to use the bathroom really bad, so I ran in to use the bathroom real quick. So I got into the theater about a minute into the actual movie. I don't think I missed a whole lot because like all the opening title cards were still rolling, and as I walked into the theater trying to find a seat, Robert De Niro was doing like the opening monologue voiceover. It was kind of like him laying in a bed, and he was just talking about something. I didn't catch the full gist of what he was saying or how it built into what's going to happen in the movie. So I did miss that opening minute, so sorry. I'll try to do better next time, honestly. So then it cuts to him getting out of bed, and he's outside at the supermarket or something, and he's talking to this girlfriend of his, and they're just kind of having a normal back and forth conversation, and he notices that this place is offering an internship program for senior citizens, which he kind of thinks is odd because, senior citizens as interns, what's the joke there? But he's like, I'm kind of bored just sitting around the house, and maybe I'll go apply for it. Which I think he kind of explained that, retirement kind of sucks in the opening monologue that I missed. From the little bit of it that I did catch, it was out of context, but I kind of got that was where he was going with it. So he goes and applies for this internship, and he's one of like 4 people that gets accepted through it. So they're like, well, we got to figure out where we're going to put everyone, and like some of them were put in certain departments. One was like a floater, and one was assigned to the CEO of the company. So guess who got assigned to her? Robert De Niro. So at first she's kind of like, I don't really need an intern. I was just kind of stuck with you. They kind of gave you to me as like a lead by example type of thing for the other employees. Like I have one of the interns, so the others won't feel as bad about having an intern hanging around as well. And she's like, so I'm probably not going to have much for you to do, so just kind of hang out, do whatever, and I'll let you know when I need you. So at first she's kind of iffy about him being there, and then he like starts doing a couple things around the office that she's been wanting other people to do that haven't been getting done. So then she starts to appreciate him a little bit more. So then, she's kind of like, I'll start having him do a few things for me here and there. And then he kind of starts to take a little bit of a responsibility for her. Like he notices her personal driver is like drinking while he's waiting for her to come out. So he kind of goes outside and he's like, I saw you drinking. You shouldn't be drinking and driving, especially with a passenger. Why don't you tell her you don't feel good and I'll take over driving for you for the day? And he's like, no, get out of here. And he's like, well, if you don't tell her, I'm going to. So either you can take a few days off and figure yourself out, or you'll be out of a job. So the driver's kind of like, yeah, I don't feel well today. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I'll get somebody else to drive. And Robert De Niro's like, oh, I don't mind driving for you. And she's like, oh, no, I'll just get my secretary to drive. And he's like, you already got her doing quite a bit, and she seems like she's having a little bit of a rough time keeping up with it. Are you sure you want to dump more onto her? He goes, really? I mean, I'm doing nothing. I don't mind driving you. So she's like, yeah, you're right. Let's go ahead and go. So he starts driving around, and So she, again, still kind of warming up to him. At this point, she's not fully into him yet. And she calls him at one point because she needs him to come get something from her office. And as he goes in, he kind of overhears this meeting where, because she's such a young executive of this company that she built herself from the ground up, her investors are a little, little cautious about, everything's happening kind of fast. Are you sure you're not getting crushed under the weight of it? Maybe you should bring somebody in to work as a CEO, and you can just kind of work with them. So she's kind of panicked, like, if I bring in someone as a CEO, that technically makes them my boss, and I could lose control of the company that I started. So she's kind of like freaking out about it a little bit, but at the same time, she wants to make her investors happy because, of course, without them, she wouldn't have been able to get where she was because of the money, obviously. But I have a small gripe with this, but I'll get to it like at the end of the video because I want to get through it first. So they give this list of possible people that they think would fit as a CEO, and she's supposed to meet with each one of them and figure out which one she wants to hire and hire them. And she meets with the first few, and she's just like, no. But anyway, he had overheard that conversation, and then as they're driving around, he's kind of listening to the other conversations, and he's not really butting in or trying to give advice, like he kind of makes like small comments to maybe try to steer her in the right direction without saying, well, I think you should do this. He just kind of like makes an observation, and then it might lead to like, oh, well, what if I did this instead of that? He goes, oh, that good word. But without the director saying, well, I think you should do this or this or that. He's just kind of floating, and she's okay with that at first, and then as it starts to weigh more and more on her with the CEO thing, she kind of gets nervous around him because she's like, he's really observant, and he's not directly saying what I should do, but he's obviously kind of steering me a certain way, and it was making her uncomfortable, so she requested for him to be transferred. And it was going to take them a while to transfer him, so in the meantime, he was still being her driver and her personal intern helping her out. And it turned out, I forget what exactly he did, but something really impressed her to where she started to respect him a lot more. And, she was admiring like his work ethic and whatnot, because as an intern for the boss, you're not supposed to leave until the boss is done working, which could be late hours because sometimes the bosses will work through the night just to get stuff done. And he's kind of like, well, I don't leave until she does. That what if she needs me for something? So one night she's working late hours, and she goes over, she's like, if you don't mind staying a couple more hours, I got some more stuff I'd like to get done. He's like, yeah, no problem. So then they kind of have a little human moment where it's just the two of them in the office, so they're just kind of sitting talking. And then she comes to appreciate, what he's doing for her a lot more. She starts to respect him a lot more. And then shortly after that, he ends up getting transferred to a different department, and she's like, no, why? Why did you transfer him? And the guy's like, you told me to. And she's like, but you didn't check with me first. What if I changed my mind? I do that sometimes. I change my mind. So she goes and finds him, and she's like, I'm so sorry you got transferred. I want you to be my personal, intern like you were. Are you willing to come back? You're not mad at me? He's like, no. He's like, I understand. So he starts helping her out more and more. Again, kind of just being like not really a fatherly figure or a role model, or he's just kind of being this sideline guide. Like he's just kind of observing from the side, and he'll like occasionally hint at something, or just to try and steer her in the right direction of where he feels it would best benefit her without coming directly out and saying it, but he still leaves it open for her to make her own choice on it. But he like presents it as an option, which is usually the best option, and if you really think about the stuff that he recommends. So she ends up moving him up to, well, I know you're my personal intern, but I'm going to have you start helping out my secretary because, like you said, she is swamped with a lot of stuff, and I think she could use the help. So then the secretary is freaking out, like, I don't need help. I got it, because I guess she's kind of worried that if the boss thinks that she can't handle the job, she might get fired or something. And he's like, well, I'm in pretty good with her. I won't let that happen. I see how hard you work around here. I'll put in good words for you whenever I can, and just kind of reassures her. So it doesn't really touch much more on her after that. She's just kind of this back burner kind of character at that point. Um, I kind of wish they would have done a little bit more of that. Like, you could see how organized she gets with just a little assistance and whatnot. And she would have stepped her game up too and been a lot more powerful of a player in the company. But no, it's like once he becomes the secretary's assistant, the secretary just kind of is faded out of the story, and he's still the boss's intern, so it still focuses around them. Um, he kind of redirects other people in the office too about like more traditional ways of doing things. Even though it's a casual environment, still instead of wearing a t-shirt and a hoodie, maybe at least put on a button-down shirt. You don't have to wear a tie. You don't necessarily have to tuck it in, although tucking it in would be nice. But just look more presentable from a business standpoint, even though you're in a casual environment. So, and like some of the guys get into that. He helps one guy out who's like looking for a place to live. So he's like helping him go over contracts and stuff so he doesn't get screwed on the deal or get something he doesn't like. So he starts to like up office morale, which she appreciates. So he starts going with her on these business trips and helping her out with stuff on her, with her family and stuff. And as she's going around meeting with these CEOs, and then as it gets to the end of the movie, she meets one of the CEOs that she kind of likes, and like he says all the right things to her, so she's willing to bring him in, but at the same time, she's still on the fence about it, but she's willing to do it because she thinks her family life is falling apart, and she's like, well, maybe if I just give in, let go, and let this guy kind of take over, I can be home more, and that'll fix everything. And that's when Robert De Niro finally steps in. He's like, can I say something to you? He's like, I've been observing you quietly for the last few months, and I've never seen anyone, have the dedication to a company the way you do, and taking you out of that would completely change the environment and the dynamic of what made the company great in the first place. He's like, no one else is going to put the time and effort and the love into your product the way you do. Which, obviously that can be said about anybody who's ever started their own company. It's your product, it's your passion. Bringing in anyone else to run it, unless they were there right from the start with you, they're not going to have the same motivation to it that you did, or the same love for it that you did. So he kind of tells her in not so many words that he thinks she should just tell the investors, screw you, I'm not hiring a CEO. But at the same time, he's like, but I can't tell you what to do. You have to make that choice on your own. That's just how I've seen things, around you. And so she's still, that kind of puts her back up in the air where she was ready to sign off and, let this guy take over. And then that kind of puts her in this odd position. And then she talks to her husband, and her husband's like, don't give anything up for me. I kind of wanted it to happen because I felt that you should be home more, but at the same time, that's selfish of me to put you in that position, And he kind of says the same thing to her that Robert De Niro's character did about how she shouldn't give up something that she loves for him or anyone else. So then she goes out to talk to Robert De Niro's character, and he's missing. And she asks the secretary, oh yeah, the secretary did reappear. But she goes, where's he at? And she's like, I don't know, he just said he was going to take the day off. And like, this is a guy who's been devoted to this company and hasn't taken a day off since he took over this internship, and I was just like, yeah, I'm going to take the day off. So, which I kind of gathered as like she needs to fly this one on her own. It's like, I know she's going to look to me to hold her hand with this, but it's something she needs to decide for herself, so I'm going to bow out and let her come to that decision on her own. So she finds out where he's at, and she goes to look for him, and he's in the park doing Tai Chi, like one of those, kind of like the yoga classes they do now, but I guess this one was the Tai Chi class, which I've seen around parks, so it's not an uncommon thing. So she goes up to him, and she's like, hey, I have something to tell you. He's like, okay, but it'll have to wait till after the class, but you're welcome to join us. So she joins in, she's like doing the Tai Chi, and then it just rolls credits. Never tells you what she wanted to tell him. She never 100% fully discloses what her choice was. But at the same time, you kind of know by the fact that she's coming to tell him that obviously she changed her mind and she's not going to hire this guy. But it never directly says that. It just kind of leaves it oblivious to, well, what did she actually end up deciding? What's she there to tell him? It's just, we gave you enough information, you fill in the blanks. So it's kind of I don't even know what type of genre to call this movie. I guess it's a romantic comedy without the romance. Well, Robert De Niro's character did meet a lady who he kind of fell for, and it does touch on this lady's home life, so I guess it's a romantic comedy, but it's not really a drama because there's not. I guess it could be because there's a little bit of drama with her possibly having to give up her company. But yeah, I don't really know what genre I would put it in, but I enjoyed it. But the whole time I was watching it, I was kind of like, this. It wasn't that it was dragging on as much as this movie is really unnecessary, but it's still fun to watch. Like the way it's playing out. I mean, there's really nothing there to keep you into I need to watch this movie, but at the same time, as you start watching it, you don't want to look away from it. You're like, oh, where's it gonna go? It's not like I need to know where it goes, but it's like, oh, where's it gonna go? I'm kind of curious to see what happens with this, or how this plays out. And so, like I said, with that said, though, I did still enjoy the movie. I enjoyed the hell out of the movie, but yeah, it wasn't really necessarily a movie that had to be made, but it was fun. So yeah, as far as a star rating on this one, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. It is more or less a middle of the road movie, but like I said, the fact that it keeps you just intrigued enough to keep watching, but it doesn't scream at you like you need to watch this, or this could go or not go. It's like, oh, well, where's this gonna go? It's like, so that kind of earns a little bit extra from me. I almost was gonna give this a 4, but like I said, there's a little nitpick I have with this movie that could have easily changed everything. Actually, there's 2 little nitpicks I have. One could actually have changed the movie and made it a whole lot simpler. Then the other one, they touch on a little bit, but they don't really go too much into it other than that. So that kind of knocked it down from a 4 for me just to a 3.5. And I think 3.5 is more fitting because, like I said, it is kind of a middle-of-the-road movie. So the first nitpick I had is towards the start of the movie, they were kind of doing this women's empowerment thing. Like, this girl started this company from her kitchen table. She went from having 16 employees when she first started to branch out and actually make it a legit company, and now she has over 250 or 260. No, I think it was 220 with the 4 interns. So she was now up from 16 employees to 220 employees. She grew the business. She met her 5-year goal within 9 months. Stuff about how she's this powerful, strong, independent woman. Her husband, who was a successful advertising agent, actually stepped down from his job to be a stay-at-home dad so that she could follow this dream of hers, and she made it work. So it's all this women's empowerment, and when she first starts meeting with these CEOs, the first one, she just flat out says, she was in the meeting with him for 10 minutes, and she walked out, and he's like, oh, that must have went good. And she's like, I was done talking to him as soon as he called it, because she runs this online shopping website. And she's like, I was done with him as soon as he called it a chick site. And honestly, she sells women's clothing. Every time they were talking about something in the clothing line, there really wasn't any mention of men. The advertising didn't show men. Nothing they showed on this, other than the people who worked in the office, had men in it. It was essentially a women's clothing store. But she got upset because he called it a chick site. Because shopping's a chick thing. No guys might be interested in shopping. Well, maybe if he had looked at the site and saw more variety for men's stuff. But, so then, like as the movie plays out, she's like constantly hammering this strong, independent woman thing, which I appreciate the hell out of. Other than like she breaks down crying to her other coworker in the meeting when he first says like the investors want you to get a CEO, and she kind of breaks down crying because of that. So it's kind of like, why can't you have a strong, independent woman without her having to cry at least once in the movie? At one point her home life is falling apart, so of course, you can't have a strong, independent woman who has a happy home life and doesn't have, spoiler, her husband cheating on her, It's like, and then the other thing as far as the strong, independent woman thing is, even though she's being the strong, independent woman, making all these decisions for herself, you still have this male character of Robert De Niro who's kind of guiding her. So it's like a woman can't be strong and independent without still having some type of male guidance. It's like, you're trying to have this strong women's empowerment meaning behind your movie, but then you still backlace it with, but, behind every strong, independent woman is a strong, independent man who guides her in every step of the way. And so, like I said, that kind of loses its points for me for that. And the other small gripe I had that, like I said, could have easily completely changed this movie is, why does this guy have to be a CEO? Why does he have to completely take over the operation of the company? Obviously, she's been running the company. She's been doing everything the way she wants to do it. The investors want someone there who can kind of guide her in the ways of business so she doesn't get overwhelmed. But why does that have to be a CEO? Why does he have to take over control of the company? Because at one point she's like, her main concern is that by hiring a CEO, this guy basically becomes her boss and he can outvote her on things that she wants to do with her company. Which she makes a valid point. Which is why I say, why does he have to be a CEO? You could stay on as CEO, hire him as a COO, or Chief Operations Officer, who oversees the day-to-day operations and reports back to you on what's going on and allows you as the CEO to make the choices of what you want to do, and who can still give you input on, well, the only problem with doing it this way is we might run into a problem over here, but if you still want to do it, we can, but I would suggest maybe trying this, because then we eliminate this problem. That's a COO's job. They report to the CEO and give options. So why are you hiring on somebody to take over as CEO when you can stay CEO, you can hire on a COO, let them handle all the day-to-day stuff and just report back to you. You can be home a little bit more, focus on your family, do stuff with your kid, do stuff with your husband, and occasionally, hey, I got to report into work and check in with stuff, oh, hey, there's an emergency at work I got to go take care of. You can still be the head of this company and still step back a little bit and let go of the reins a little bit, let someone else kind of run things, but you still have final say over everything. And that would have completely changed the dynamic of this movie. It would have made the whole thing not a story. It would have been like, hey, there's this lady who has this new intern and she's hiring a COO. And then it would have been like the relationship building of the intern working for the woman, which would have not needed the CEO part to even fill in the gaps. So that was, like I said, a minor gripe that could have easily fixed this movie, but then they would have had to find something else to fill out the story with, which they could have easily done, because at another point, she's in a rush and like it's the day where everything's going wrong. You have those days. Like something got screwed up at the warehouse. There's this other thing that's going on in the office. Oh, we double booked a meeting. All this stuff. And she's on the phone with her mother. She's arguing with her mother about something. And as she's arguing with her mother, she's typing an email to this other guy who works for her, whose name I think was Matt. And that plays in a second. Because then, as she's kind of like bad-mouthing her mom in this email to Matt. And then she gets off the phone with her mother and she hits send on the email. And when she's selecting who to send it to on the phone, she thinks she hit Matt, but right underneath Matt is Mom. So she actually ends up emailing this nasty email about her mother to her mother. And she's like, oh my gosh. So she goes to like her IT department. She's like, is there any way to undo this? And they're like, no, you're pretty much screwed. Robert De Niro's like, well, I guess we could just take the day off and go rob your mom's house and steal her computer. And she's like, are you serious? Would you really do that? He's like, if it keeps you out of hot water, let's go. So they have this little fun adventure of them breaking into the mother's house. and like everything going wrong, but they still managed to get the job done. You could have filled this movie with little quips like that, like, oh, like, yeah, this woman's just having a rough time with, like, each day something new's going wrong as she's trying to keep her company running, and Robert De Niro and the other interns have to go out and do these little quirky adventures to kind of keep things running. It could have been easily a fun movie with that. It'd be like little mini heist movies in the middle of this other movie, and it would have been great. But no, we can't fill out the story that way other than this one little segment of the story. So instead, let's like give her all this negative female drama crap. Let's make up something that could be easily avoided so she has this issue that she's got to work through, and that's where he'll come in. He'll be her guardian angel or her guiding light. And you could have fixed this movie really easy and got it a lot higher rating for me. But like I said, it wasn't a bad movie. It was a fun ride. I enjoyed it. It kept me just interested enough to want to see what was going to happen next. The ending was kind of abrupt and left it open, which at the same time I appreciate, like, leaving open endings where you can be like, wait, what happened? What did she do this or did she do this? But you didn't really leave the option of which way did she go, because it was kind of obvious which way she went. Unless her ultimate decision was to bring in the guy as a COO, and that's what we never found out. But yeah, so anyway, that's enough talking about this movie. It's been out for a while. It'll probably be out on DVD fairly soon. Yeah, but it's worth a watch if you like. I don't want to say chick flicks, but if you like semi-romantic comedies, yeah, check it out. You might enjoy it. So anyway, that is it for this episode. I am going to see some more movies at some point, either today or tomorrow. So there will be more of these coming up throughout the month of December, because again, I'm trying to fill out my list of movies I've seen before the end of the year. Maybe I can still pull off a top 12, but I doubt it. We'll see where that goes. So until then, again, remember to like, comment, rate, subscribe, share, and whatever else you can do. If you want to see more of these, because I do appreciate the feedback. But yeah, so that's it for this episode. So again, thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see you at the movies.